All right, this is my video review of the article about social psychological interventions in education about not being magic. Um, One of the things that reading through the article that I found quite interesting, and maybe being a science background type person, was the analogy of to an airplane and how there's four things that we could kind of take out of that that we don't always notice so much, even with an airplane, and how we notice sometimes in educational settings and how students can learn these things that are not part of the mainstream education, but it helps them to survive and gives them actual skills that they can use throughout education that aren't directly related to a certain content area or anything. Um, and so there was four little parts of that were brought up, and the first one was that it was hard to see the forces upon which they operate. And so, like they talked about in the article of an airplane, we can't see that force of lift. We can't see that essentially the air resistance and things that are going on that allow a huge, heavy plane to fly. And a lot of times with students, we can't see exactly what it is that they are maybe lacking or the little skills that they could use to help them be successful. Um, Number two was they seem small relative to the traditional educational reforms. Um, these little itty bitty things that are injected kind of into the educational system, they seem small, but in the realm of everything, they're actually very, very large because they kind of bring all the content that we seem to be trying to teach the students all the time. It kind of brings them together and wraps that all back around. So, really, I think it's a big thing, not necessarily a small thing. Um, Number three, how to see how relatively uh, brief messages can affect students' views and behaviors. And the idea they talk about these social, psychological little intervention things is that they're kind of small little snippets that we add in, that we inject into the educational system, but they're very relative because they're little things that help them to survive in the classroom. And to me, a lot of that stuff that it's learning that's going to go on for life and not just in a elementary classroom or middle school classroom or even a high school classroom. There are things that help them to learn and to get past what little things that are getting in their way. And then the fourth part of it was the mysterious about how a time limited or one shot intervention can generate effects that persist far ahead in time. And what I kind of took from this was the idea that we do these little interventions, these little things here and there, we interject, and it becomes part of that lifelong process. And it's not just it's a little 5-10 minute lesson here that, we got a short term effect. They actually have long term effects, and it helps them in the long run to be better students. Um, so it's just kind of interesting how I saw those four parts with the plane analogy, and maybe being a science teacher, that's just kind of what drew me to it, and the idea of looking at the science of it and the analogy that they used and how well those all four fit into it. Um, and so I guess kind of my question, my thought is, what's your thoughts of the airplane analogy? Does it make sense? Does it fit to the idea, or were the authors a little bit way out there in left field on this one? So, thanks.